Hello and welcome to Creating a Family. Talk about adoption, foster care, and kinship care. My name is Tracy Whitney. I am the content director for creatingafamily.org and the host of both of our weekly podcasts. I'm very excited about today's topic because sleep is such a significant issue for so many families in the adoption, foster care, and kinship care spaces. I'm joined today by Dr. Chris Winters. He is practicing sleep medicine and neurology since 2004, and he's been involved with sleep medicine and sleep research since 1993. He's the author of The Sleep Solution, Why Your Sleep is Broken and How to Fix It, as well as The Rested Child, Why Your Tired, Wired, or Irritable Child May Have a Sleep Disorder and How to Help. In addition to working with numerous professional sports organizations to help their athletes optimize sleep, he is also the host of the podcast Sleep Unplugged with Dr. Chris Winter. Welcome, Dr. Winter. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we're going to dive right into a basic understanding of sleep because we do have some maybe new parents in our community that don't necessarily understand how core sleep is to a child's overall health and development. Why don't you just kind of give us that basic rundown of why sleep is so important and why we need to pay attention to sleep habits?
Yeah, I think you're right to start with an educational piece. Looking and dealing with a lot of parents, I think that's a place to begin, not only practically in terms of understanding sleep allows you to know what to do and to handle situations, but I also think that a foundation of sleep knowledge really takes a lot of fear and uncertainty out of a situation. And I think sleep embodies a lot of that for all kinds of parents. I think that it's sort of natural that when you're waiting on a child, you're hoping for, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and that they're a good sleeper. Like that's sort of in the back of your mind. It was for me anyway. I didn't care about gender. I didn't care about if they had any interest that eventually mirrored mine. I just wanted them to be able to sleep so I could get some things done and put some groceries away. So I think that starting with that education is really helpful for a lot of parents. And I don't think that sometimes that is given. And what we give instead is a lot of sort of expectation and maybe science that reinforces a feeling of if we don't get this right, all kinds of bad things are going to happen. And I think sometimes we are given sort of an expectation that we have a lot more control over it than we really do. It's almost like the media telling you to have a short child, they're going to struggle. So what you really want is a tall child. They'll get picked first in all the sports. They'll be able to reach the spices a lot easier on that top shelf. It's just going to be an easier life for them all around. But you're never really told, well, how do I make them tall? Like, what do I do? When in fact, you don't. Like they kind of end up the height they're going to end up. Maybe if you give them some extra protein and milk, it might influence it. But your control over the height variable is kind of small. And I think in some ways, sleep's like that too. That for a lot of individuals, it becomes less about trying to control it and maybe more about working with what you got.
So let's drill down on that a little bit. We're talking to a population of parents and caregivers who are raising kids with very unique needs compared to the general population. What would make an adopted, foster, or kinship child particularly vulnerable to sleep challenges?
I think a lot of things. I think that anytime we are dealing with young people that are changing their circumstances pretty radically or feel uncertain or unstable in their situation, it's often going to be reflected in terms of sleep. I think that for a lot of parents that they think of sleep as a bit static, it's a very dynamic variable. The place where I like to start with all families, particularly maybe the families within your population, is a very simple fact, which is every individual, every human on this planet is going to sleep. So what we want to very quickly eliminate from the decision-making matrices here is this idea that I've got a child who can't sleep. which is never the case. That's sort of like saying, I've got a child who does not consume fluids. That would be devastating and lead to death in a few days. Like everybody's drinking a little fluid, eating some food, they're breathing air and they're sleeping. Those are kind of non-negotiable. So it's very helpful with parents if we can get them to a place to start the conversation from, I've got a child whose sleep needs or patterns are not meeting my expectation, or that they're disorganized in a way I'm having trouble organizing. But moving away from, we've tried everything, we cannot get this child to sleep, is not productive because it's not true. I mean, we see this in adults too. I mean, this is what killed the king of pop, Michael Jackson. He went from doctor to doctor stating that he couldn't sleep. And instead of questioning that theory, we went along with it and continued. Not we, I wasn't a part of that team, thank God.
Yeah,
Giving
good
him
disclaimer.
this drug. Oh, that drug didn't work. Yeah, right. I have nothing to do with that pop star. The pop stars I work with are much more like B and C tier. So anyway, it starts the process in a much healthier place. And I also think that it feeds backwards to the parent's relationship with the child, which is, it's okay, you're going to sleep. Like there's a lot of messaging that happens with sleep that can be really healthy or really problematic. I always tell the story. I've got 3 kids, and around the time they were, I don't know, 5 or 6, I told them, you can go to bed whenever you want to. It doesn't really matter to mom and dad. Like you just do what you want. So if you're reading your Magic Treehouse book or you're playing with your dolls or whatever, you do it. And when you're ready to sleep, you can go to sleep. Now, the rules are you have to be in your bedroom. So you can't keep coming out and asking me for a glass of water, that creepy thing where a kid walks out of their bedroom and stands next to you in bed and you wake up and there's like this person there just kind of staring at you. Like none of that. I always told kids, you come out of your room if you smell smoke or you see somebody you don't recognize. Otherwise, please stay in your bedroom. But what we didn't tell them was, okay, go to bed whenever you want to, turn the light whenever you want to. I'm going to wake you up about the same time every day. Like that was sort of the unspoken part of the deal. So what we wanted our kids to sort of develop was sleep's important, but you're not going to get in trouble if you're having trouble falling asleep tonight or it doesn't happen the way you want. So, trying to start from a very young age with all children, developing a sense of sleep as a positive, not something you loathe or fear, or this isn't like shooting free throws in the championship basketball game. Do you know what I mean? With mom and dad in the stands. We want to remove that sort of performance anxiety, which really helps both kids and parents really understand how sleep's going to work moving forward, I think.
So it's kind of a reframing.
Yes, 100%.
It's saying, let me help you develop a healthy, positive relationship with sleep. And let's not see it as punitive or the pressure. I did have one child in particular who felt tremendous amount of pressure to fall asleep when we told them to go to bed. And us telling them to go to bed doesn't necessarily mean I'm telling you to fall asleep, but that's the internalized message. Yeah. So, how might a child's early trauma or loss or neglect or abuse show up in a sleep pattern?
Oh, I think that's a great question. And I love the way you said reframing. It's that's all we're doing most of the time is just reframing something. It's somebody says, "Oh, it's my sleep's a nightmare. I get in bed and I'm awake for 1 or 2 hours before I fall asleep." Okay, why is that a nightmare? If you ask me, Chris, give me a nightmare scenario. Not to be too graphic, it'd probably be like that scene from Silence of the Lambs. Like I'm like helping somebody move a couch into their van to be a nice guy, and the next thing I know, I'm like chained up in somebody's bed. That's a nightmare.
That's
You
a
know what I mean?
nightmare.
Like what a nightmare is like a comfortable bed, and you got a family around you that really cares about you, and some dolls and trucks and toys and art supplies. Like that's pretty awesome. Like so, maybe not meeting an expectation, but how have we gotten to nightmare? So to me, I think that's really important. So for parents, I think that thinking about those expectations are really important, and that framing becomes really important because we as parents have these expectations as well as the kids. And so you can imagine, to answer your question, a kid with trauma during the
Hmm.
day when you're running around and doing stuff and you've got a family that's really excited that you're there and they're doing all kinds of things to welcome you and make you feel at home and ease concerns and provide that those symbols of stability, all that kind of disappears at night, especially when
Hmm.
you're in your own bedroom. You're back to being alone. And I think sometimes for some people that being alone and, not distracted by other circumstances can be really problematic. You're in the dark. It's reminiscent of being alone in that other place. And so I think that the night, not just for kids, but for everyone, can be a place of real concern, horror, anxiety,
Vulnerability.
stress, vulnerability.
Yep.
I've been left so many times. It's kind of like a little mini leaving. Okay, goodbye. We're leaving and going to our place, and we're leaving you here by yourself in this room that you have no attachment to, whatever. So I think that that's a very sensitive time for kids. And again, like you said, reframing, we're trying to frame that as a positive. This is something we do with adults all the time that if somebody said, Chris, what's the key to great sleep? It's being equally happy in bed, asleep as you are awake. Like that. And that's tough for some people to get to. It's kind of like me saying, well, don't be scared of heights. You're like, well, great. Like you're telling me this, but every time I get up high,
But
I'm
how?
scared, like, right. So it really takes time. And I think it gets magnified or amplified by something I say to parents all the time, which is I think parents can handle anything if they're getting their own sleep and private time relatively protected. If
Yeah.
you know that you're going to put that child down and they're going to fall asleep and you can catch an episode of The Gilded Age, get some work done, balance the checkbook, pay some bills, do something that you like to do to kind of
Hmm.
decompress and de-stress. I think you can pretty much handle anything that a kid throws at you. I think when you start getting a situation where sleep is not a certainty, it's not only harmful to the child, like you're talking about, and kind
Hmm.
of creates these relived traumas and things of that nature. But for the parent, it's that uncertainty. And we all felt it as young parents, like put the kid down, okay, and you tiptoe out of the room and close the door.
Yeah.
And you don't do anything for the next hour because you don't expect to be able to do anything because you're like, oh, they're going to wake up. You get the baby monitor, glued to your ear or whatever. So to me, it's really about at the same time simultaneously trying to create structure and order for the family and the parents so they can be at their best, but also for this new amazing member of the family that's coming in and trying to assimilate. I think
Hmm.
that's the objective. And it's a tough one. It really is.
So, what are some of the things that we would see showing up in a child if those experiences are not conducive to them having that sense of calm and rest when they're in their bed?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things. I think they can be subtle. The curtain calls, we call them. You put them in bed and then they come out, I'm thirsty, and you give them a glass of water and you come back. Like, I heard something. Like, okay, well, we
Right.
live in a world with sound, so let's check this all out or whatever. I think there's something under my bed. So those things can be kind of maddening.
Hmm.
And so I think that's probably the one that we're most familiar with. I mean, they can escalate all the way up to nightmares and night terrors and night terrors meaning abnormal awakenings out of a deep sleep. So this is
Hmm.
the sleepwalking, screaming at night, and you walk in and they seem kind of disoriented and out of it, have no memory of it the next day, versus
Right.
the nightmare where maybe an older child is able to tell you a story. Oh my God, there was a thing underneath my bed and it reminds me of the place where I came from. And so there's more of a story and memory
Right.
to it. Night terrors are interesting. A lot of times, a family will put a kid down and literally before you can get down to the couch and, sit back down, they're screaming. And
Hmm.
it feels made up. Like, oh my
Right.
God, there's no way they were asleep and they're screaming and kind of acting strangely. But, for a lot of those kids, that parasomnia can really happen. Regressive behaviors. A child who was not really struggling with bedwetting or things of that nature is
Yeah.
now bedwetting. That's probably the most common one that we see. But, sleepwalking, kids are, getting out of their bed and falling asleep on the couch or in your own bed and having little memory of those types of things too. Eating unusual things, leaving the house. I mean, seen all kinds of things like that. So
Yeah.
I think that those kinds of behaviors are something you just kind of have to prepare for. It's like there's a medication I use for narcolepsy for some of my patients that can, in very rare cases, cause bedwetting. And man, I tell them like, prepare for the bedwetting, just so, and it rarely happens, but I just want
Hmm.
people to know that when it does, it's not out of the blue. You don't need to be too freaked out about it. It'll probably happen once and never happen again. So I think that for these parents, it might be easier to prepare them for all of those things and have
Yeah.
them come back and say, Chris, nothing happened. It was great. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like it's
Right.
like an ENT that I know when he takes people's tonsils out, says you could be off of work for a month. They're never off work for a month. So they always feel like they got like, oh, I was only off to work 2 weeks. It was great. Like,
Yeah.
it's really 2 weeks were the worst sore throat of your life. And this guy's painted a picture to make you feel like you won the lottery, which is awesome. That's a great sleight of hand there.
And framing of expectations.
Yes. I mean, isn't that what, I mean, if you could give like one sentence advice, it's release expectations.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's hard. I mean, we went through, it's probably oversharing. We went through a process of trying to adopt and eventually it was international. Countries were
Mm.
closing down and at war. They didn't have copy machines. It was just a nightmare. Um, the whole process was release one expectation after another.
Yes.
I can still mentally visit my expectation of what was going to happen. And yeah, it was just an
Right.
exercise of, yeah, you've got to let go of all these expectations and let it play out and react to the reality, not that delta, that difference between the reality you've been given and what you expected.
Yeah, we find very often that that gap between
Yeah.
expectations and reality is
Ugh.
what can set parents off track and just make them feel like they can't cope with what's in front of them to cope with.
I think sleep is a microcosm of exactly
Yep.
what you do. I'm going to go to bed at night. I'm going to be asleep in 2 minutes and I'm going to sleep all the way through the night, no pee pee breaks. And I'm going to wake up in the morning and feel great and let's do it. And yeah, like, see, if it works out, great, but it might
Yeah,
not. And are you ready
that's a
for it
rare
not working
child,
out? That is a rare child.
especially in
Yeah.
our demographic where we're talking today. Many of the families that we're supporting and serving have children with prenatal exposure to alcohol or drugs. And those things can definitely impact a child's regulatory system, including their sleep regulatory system. What specific things would be seen in a child like this, in addition to some of the other things that you've already mentioned?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think the first place that we can start is, if you look up the National Sleep Foundation, if you type in National Sleep Foundation, sleep need by age, literally from birth until senior citizen discount, it'll tell you the average amount of sleep
Yeah.
that group is getting. And it does a good job of giving you the average number of hours and then sort of a range on either side of, but you might in 10% of the time, 10% of the time see this much or this few. So sleep's a bell curve. It's like height, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think what you're describing with these prenatal exposures, think about the average child's height and maybe what something like prenatal exposure to alcohol does to development, height expectations. It might offset that a little bit.
Hmm.
Now you're going to work hard with good nutrition and all these things to try to overcome these things, and often people do. But my guess is if you look as a population, they're going to be shifted to the left a little bit based
Right.
upon this thing that was really outside of their control. So sleep's kind of like that too, that when you look at these norms or you're sitting in your kinder music class or parenting group or whatever you're doing with all the other parents of their children of different backgrounds, that you might be a little bit on the outside of that bell curve. And so going right back to the expectation, I think that's the first one is if you're expecting your child to get the same amount of sleep that your other children did or other kids that you know of that age, that's probably mistake number one.
Right.
That for a lot of these children, including children on the spectrum, they can often have a pretty dramatically smaller sleep need than age matched individuals who aren't experiencing those types of things. So I think again, when it's like the ENT, when we set out thinking, okay, if we can get 6 hours or 7 hours, that would be a great night. You're already kind of on the right track there. And if you're surprised by the child getting 8 hours, wonderful. I mean, I see kids that, they're getting put down at, 7 o'clock and they're expecting them to sleep till 7 o'clock the next day. Well, that's what my other child did, or that's what I need as a parent. And that's a tough one. Like, well, your new child doesn't really care in that way what you need. And so we need to figure out how can we get you what you need, but also understand that supporting your child and their specific need can be two different things. And that's where you start to see a lot of parental interaction with their clinicians and pediatricians. Why does this child take this medication? Well, it's to help them sleep. Well, what prompted this? Well, we'd put him down and he'd be awake for 2 or 3 hours before he'd fall asleep. Right.
Yeah.
Because that's the amount of sleep that he seems to need at this time. So is that medication designed to improve his sleep? Or is it designed to give you more time to sleep, which is a weird situation to be in
Right.
sometimes, where as a sleep provider, I need to be respectful and try to support the parents in getting what they need to be effective, but also understand that the child's need may be radically different from, and I feel like a lot of sleep providers, and just a little disclaimer, I think the average pediatrician has gotten something like 1 hour of sleep education, 25% have gotten none. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times sleep help within our population of, Western doctors becomes sleeping pills.
Mm.
Take this melatonin, clonidine, whatever to essentially sedate. And I
Right.
think we have to be very careful with that sometimes. So I think sleep need is a small one. I think with developmental disorders, you have a lot more issues related to maybe underdeveloped upper airway or musculature, hypotonia. And these
Mm-hmm.
things can result in all kinds of, a subtle breathing disturbances. So we think of sleep apnea as the 250-pound truck driver guy, and it can be a young person. We
Mm-hmm.
see a lot in Down syndrome, bigger tongue, smaller airways. So they have a lot of airway obstruction that can be quite silent. And so they're not snoring everybody out of the house, but they're struggling to maintain their airway throughout the night. And to do that, they're waking up constantly through the night. Their airway collapses, their oxygen is dropping, and their CO2 is going up a little bit, and they wake up and catch your breath. Mom, and screaming out, and so he just
Right.
wakes up all the time, or he's so tired during the day. So, looking out for airway disorders, seizures can be very common in some populations, particularly fetal alcohol syndrome. So you can also see these sometimes only manifesting themselves at night. They have some unusual behaviors and things of that nature. Restless leg syndrome, where the kids are there's a new disorder. It's uh, restless movement syndrome. There's a new name for it when it applies to kids, and I always forget what it is. But it's the same kind of thing where they're just restless sleepers. When mom comes in there in the morning to get everybody up, the sheets are all pulled off and the pillows on the ground, and it's like a tornado's kind of gone through
Right.
there. So paying attention to those types of things can give you little clues as to, is there a disorder here that we could, address and specifically pinpoint to perhaps make their sleep a little bit better.
I'd like to interrupt this interesting conversation about sleep for just a minute and tell you about our library of 15 free courses from the Jockey Being Family Foundation. We are thankful for their support to bring you these learning opportunities. We are excited about how they will strengthen your family. If you go to bit.ly/JBF support, you can take one or all 15. That's bit.ly/JBF support. Let's jump into some of the practical strategies that you have found successful for helping families whose children, are impacted by trauma or are impacted by prenatal exposures or neurodiversity, all of which are very common in our community.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I guess the first sort of thing that I like to talk about is this process is going to take a little time. I think you can't hear that enough as a parent. And with sleep specifically, because I felt it myself, you just want the sleep thing fixed as quickly as possible. Because, I mean,
Because
every
you're
night.
tired.
You're tired, yes, and irritable, and you feel, I mean, my worst parenting happened when I mean, so my first child was born when I was finishing up medical school. My second child was born when I was a first year neurology resident, and my third child was born when I was in my sleep fellowship. And man, like those are not the greatest of sleep times in your
Yeah.
life. And I just remember thinking I remember one time my kid crying or doing something like kids do. It was nothing out of the ordinary.
Right.
And at some point, I just said, "Oh, go to sleep, you idiot," to like a baby.
Right.
And I just kind of froze. I guess I like it's like when you're locking your keys in your car, as you're closing the door, you're thinking the
Yeah.
keys are in, no, 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 and you do it anyway. Like, so I can almost see these words coming out of my mouth, like trying to
Right.
collect them and shove them back in my, and I said it, and I just kind of paused, and my wife and I looked at each other, and we just started laughing. Like,
Right.
what are you talking? What are you yelling idiot for? Like, you need to get some sleep. So I think that trying to set the expectation of it's not going to happen as quickly as you think, but there are things
Mhm.
that we can do. And
Right.
this is where I really feel like a partnership of parents is such an advantage. It's like somebody saying to me, Chris, I'm having triplets. What do you think I should do? That's where I fake like a drop call. Like when somebody calls me, I'm having triplets. I need some help with my sleep. I just like hang up. Like I've got nothing for you. There's
Get
nothing.
more parents in
Sorry.
the house.
No, yeah, call your in-laws, I guess. Yeah, get some help.
Mm.
What was it? What is that? It's like DoorDash, but it's like for help with stuff. Like if you need
Oh,
help
wouldn't
moving
that
some
be
furniture.
lovely?
You call those people up and give them, $20 an hour to like, jump up and down with your
Mm.
kids and play music. But so to me, I think that there are things that we can do, but it's just, starts with like managing everybody's expectations. And I think for a starting point, I think it really has to be looking at some sort of scheduling or consistency. And it's interesting, I'm old. So I've been doing something related to sleep since I was an undergrad in the early 90s. And it's interesting when people first started paying attention to sleep, it was all about amount. Got to get the right amount. And
Mhm.
that's valid, absolutely. You're got to eat the right amount of food or whatever. And then it became, okay, it's not just amount, but quality because you can't be having sleep apnea, restless leg, or narcolepsy. And so it's the right amount and good quality sleep. Yes, absolutely. What's really interesting when you look at research now within sleep, or you head out to a scientific conference, it's all about consistency, meaning that you can have the best sleep in the world and you're getting your 7 hours or your 8 hours. And 7 hours is tied most directly to adult health positivity. It's not eight. So,
Mhm.
whatever, 7, 8. But you could get 7 hours by sleeping, midnight to 7 a.m. And then 2 weeks later, your shift at the nuclear power plant changes and you sleep from noon to 7 p.m. And there's a lot of places that do that. You're 7A to 7P for 14 days and you flip. So these individuals are getting the right amount, great quality sleep, but their consistency is terrible.
Right.
You're a pilot and she flies all over the world and you never know what city she's going to be in, but she's able to get enough sleep. The airline's making sure that it's blocked off, but it's always switching time. And these are devastating to our health.
Right.
And one of the things a mentor told me in neurology was brains love a schedule. And we all feel that, when we're in a really good schedule, everything's happening at the right, like all of a sudden at 7:30 in the morning while you're walking the dogs, you feel yourself get hungry.
Yeah.
Like you weren't hungry at 7:25, but now it's 7:30 and you're like, well, I'm hungry. Right. Not because your body suddenly ran out of fuel. It's your body knows the bagel and the orange juice is getting ready to come. And when you think about sleep, it's not just what we do right before we go to bed, which is important. So if you're a parent and you have, okay, we do dinner and then we do one 30-minute Dora the Explorer and then we read books and we do bath time and we dim the lights and we do the lavender spray. That's great. But that kind of thoughtfulness of schedule really needs to happen 24 hours a day because that's where your child's brain is getting its cues for not only when it should be awake and thriving and doing well on a spelling test, but also when it should be winding down and going to sleep. I mean, every parent knows you go on a play date 2 hours before you're leaving. You guys say, okay, guys, 2 hours, 2 hour warning, 2 hour warning. So get those
Right, right.
appropriations made
Yeah.
because, oh, hour warning, we're leaving in an hour. Oh, mommy, wait, we haven't even gotten to, like, so whatever. So you have to give it. So our brains are looking for those things. If we can give them to them 24 hours a day, two things happen. One, it really helps a child sleep better. Number two, it really gives a parent a sense of control. Like you
Hmm.
can control, like, what time is breakfast? Well, it depends on how well they slept that night. That's trouble. And I
Hmm.
understand that instinct of it was a bad night. So both you and your child, you feel like need more sleep. We were up, we were, looking around for ghosts that don't exist and investigating sounds that were emanating from the closet. And we just had a terrible night. Yeah, but you still want to try to get that day started as consistently as you can and with an attitude. And it's acting to the level of Daniel Day-Lewis, which is we're happy about it. Hey, it's the morning. Let's
Yeah.
get going. Oh my God, we're gonna have a great day today. And your mother's making pancakes and do all this good stuff, and we're gonna have a great day. And oh, I feel terrible. I feel terrible. And so versus get up, this is awful. I feel terrible. You really have to sell it. You know what I mean? So because you don't want them to feel bad about it because it's their fault. You would have slept great the night, but they were up looking around for, yeah, I heard a sound. Dad, I heard
Yeah.
a sound.
So what I'm hearing you say is the good morning song that I used to sing to my children every weekday morning as they were getting up was a good thing, and they're not going to be able to
Every
tell me
kid in the
otherwise.
world right now, if you call them up, okay, I'm going to call up somebody, he's 57 years old, he lives in Cleveland, sing the song your parents sang when they woke you up in the morning. My wife can. I forget what the song was. It was her father sang to her. And so it's one of two things. It's the morning song everybody knows, or they remember a parent coming in with a vacuum. I hear that all the time. It's like, we're coming in at 6 a.m. with the
That's
vacuum,
funny.
vacuuming up,
That's funny.
whatever. Like, so, but there's something kind of wonderful about that, what we call a zeitgeber or a time
Yeah.
cue.
Yeah.
Here comes mom with the vacuum every morning at 6 o'clock. So your brain starts to understand it's like being in the military. So like my middle child went to the Naval
Hmm.
Academy, and I remember him telling me like the first time I got to speak to him, it's like an abduction, and then all of a sudden he resurfaces. 4 weeks later, he gets a phone. It's like a phone call, like, leave the money at this place or you'll never see me again. I kind of had that kind
I
of feel
remember
to
that
it.
phone call well. Yes.
Did you have somebody who was in
Well,
the
my son
military?
is, yeah, one of my sons is an Army reservist.
It's
Same
like
thing.
total radio silence for the kid who can't do
Right.
anything for himself. And then now he's gone and your mind goes to places. But anyway, I remember him calling up and saying, no insomnia around here. Right. Because
Right.
nobody, there is no, I was pretty stressed out last night because everybody was screaming at me yesterday. I didn't sleep well, Sarge. Well, why don't you just sleep in private and we'll meet up at lunchtime? No, that's not happening at all. So, trying to do it in a way that's not aggressive or mean,
Right.
but filled with love and support and fun. I know you had a bad day, but we're going to get up. I had a bad day too, a bad night, and we're going to get up and we're going to do this thing together. And that consistency is tough, but it will pay off very quickly. It's sort of like, I can't get my son to eat dinner. Okay, well, take away his lunch and half his breakfast and watch what happens in a few days, right? So we're not going to sidestep eating. At
Right.
some point, your child will eat. Sleep's kind of the same thing. You just need to kind of create a situation where his brain has no other option
Right.
but to kind of do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
And that takes some courage, but it can be done. I remember going camping one time with our kids, and we were out with some other families, and they were like, I was like, okay, guys, it's time for y'all to go to bed. And they were like, okay, and they put their little s'more sticks down, and they all went into the same tent and went right to sleep. And I remember this other parent was like, holy hell, what? How
What
did
just
you were
happened?
so lucky that they said you were so lucky that you have good sleepers. I'm like, listen, brother, it is not luck. I said, that is years of psychological manipulation, right? In the kindest of ways, so
Right. In the most
and you can
positive
do it
of
too.
ways.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the most positive of ways, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and I think when we're very consistent and we hold to those routines and those structures, it creates such a sense of safety that they can trust us when we say, okay, now it's
Yes.
time to go to bed. And they can trust us that they'll be safe while they're in bed. And so
Absolutely.
that consistency of day start, night end, and all that goes in between that, it creates predictability, it
Yes.
creates trust, and it creates safety. I love what you said about rest, even without sleep, being restorative. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how that plays out because we do have many families whose children go to bed but don't necessarily sleep right away, like you mentioned earlier.
Yes. I think this is really important. So important that is why I called my second book The Rested Child, and it was a massive mistake. Because it sort of within the publishing world separated out as a sleep book into something completely different. I have no idea, but I stand by the at least The Rested Child. The publisher came up with a little byline, which I always thought was kind of hokey. But anyway, um, but I think resting is so important, and it's one of those messages that you can start to promote to your child immediately or all of your children. And it's something that you can take some safe harbor in the sense that you've put some, your kids, it's a quiet time and you have a little chance to catch up on some rest because last night was a disaster. Lying down somewhere where it's relatively quiet and closing your eyes and thinking about a happy place. You're being at the beach or doing something fun with your family or planning out a vacation that you want to take one day with all of everybody to go to Disney World, whatever it is. I mean, it can be a celebrity crush. I mean, whatever, wherever you want to go mentally, as long as it's a positive place, prayer, mindfulness, breathe, all that stuff is really restorative. And one of the messages that I really tried to reinforce with my entire family was getting rid of this idea that you get in bed and if you don't fall asleep quickly, that's wasted time.
Hmm.
And it's really not. It's a wonderful, glorious time. And so this idea that, well, I tried a nap, but I can't fall asleep, so I just abandoned it. Well, no, what you want to do every day is maybe, and we all had rest. That was rest time. We never called it nap time or sleep time because that put on an expectation of that we needed you to sleep. No, I just need you to go to your room and rest. If resting means, pushing some little matchbox cars around, that's fine. If resting means lying in your bed and reading a Harry Potter book, that's fine too. And we always made the declaration that mom and dad are going to rest too. We're all resting. You're not missing out on anything unless
Right.
you find me in a horizontal position with my eyes closed, exciting. You're not missing anything. So we're all going to rest. It's important to us. It's important, to the family. We're doing the same thing. We're putting our phones away and all that good stuff. And that this is a time that's going to be very restorative to you. And I think when you talk to a lot of adults and maybe older kids, and ask them the question when you have that rest period, even if you don't sleep, how do you feel afterward? You can feel quite amazing. I remember even my clinic, I'd be talking to a patient at 11:30 in the morning and like, oh my God, I'm struggling to stay awake listening to this patient. Like I'm pinching myself and moving around because and then the patient's over and I've got my lunch break and I would go take a little rest. And a lot of times I wouldn't fall asleep, but man, I felt amazing after just being in a quiet place and closing my eyes for 30 minutes. And if sleep happens, awesome. But that's sort of the message you want to give the kids. Hey, how was resting? Oh, it's good. I got in bed. I tried to go to sleep. I didn't fall asleep. But did you rest? Well, yes. Oh, then you did a great job. You did it. Like that was the objective.
Right.
If your sister falls asleep, well, that's great too. Oh, you fell asleep. Oh, that's good too. But
Yeah.
the point is resting is always under our control. Sleep isn't. We are going to sleep eventually, but in terms of
Hmm.
this moment right now, it's sometimes kind of hard to do that. So, what you're also teaching a child is I'm going to give you a task, which is to go into your room and close your eyes, lie horizontal, and rest for a few minutes. You can do that. You can be successful. That is a choice. And I think that when kids start to understand that that's the objective and not I need you to fall asleep. If I catch you with that book in bed one more time, you're in big trouble. Or if you don't get the sleep you need, you're going to fail your test and you're not going to get a good job and your career is going to be a disaster. Like wherever people go, you're not going to make the team. You're not going to go.
Catastrophizing.
Yes. When catastrophizing starts, Doesn't
Right.
start when you're 37 years old. It starts when
Right.
you're 7 years old. Like,
Right.
and so we can, in some ways, help to shape those beliefs, at least around things like sleep and eating and things of that nature from a very young age. So these kinds of things I think can be really important for kids. And I also think it's important too that we can also share how we're feeling about things. Mommy needs a rest because last night, I think you would agree, partner, it wasn't a great night. Like you woke me up 17 times or something of that nature. So I'm feeling pretty depleted right now. So I really need a rest because of that. It's not a guilt thing, it's just a statement of fact.
Right.
You had a difficult night and it's impacted me. So I'm going to really need this rest. I mean, I think it's okay for a parent to say, I don't know that we're going to be able, I don't think we're going to be able to go get that ice cream today that we had talked about. I'm pretty tired. I would really like to get ice cream. I'm sure we can later in this week. But right now, I've got a lot of things to do. I've got to take this rest because last night was very difficult. I know you had a hard time, but don't worry, we're going to get the ice cream when we have a little bit of a better day.
Yeah.
It's almost like a sticker chart, but
Right.
it's not a punishment. It's a statement of I don't know that I can operate the car to drive to the ice cream parlor because I'm so
Right.
tired
Right.
right now. And I think it's okay in a non sort of passive aggressive way to say to a child, I have needs and I'm going to be better able to support yours
Right.
when I get what I need because I'm part of this family too. And it's one of my favorite things to ask. It's questionable, but when I see kids in the clinic and the kid wakes mom up 30 times during the night, I always ask, why do you wake your mom up? I love asking that question. They never have an answer for it. Do you think it's kind of mean that you wake her up? I mean, do you think she can actually put you back to sleep? No. Don't you think it's kind of mean because she's got to take care of you and do all the things for you, and then you just go in there and wake her up? Why do you do that? And it's really interesting to see a kid ask that question for the first time because they've
Mhm.
never really considered it. It's just sort of a
Right.
force of habit. I woke up, so I got to go wake up everybody else in the house. So these little conversations, if done kindly and respectfully, I think can be very helpful to kids.
Yeah, that's pretty groundbreaking for a lot of families, I'm sure. That's probably not the tradition they've followed thus far.
Well, it's hard because the kids new to your class.
Right.
You're laying out the red carpet for them. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Right.
to have those kinds of conversations feels sort of it's like I own dogs. I'm no dog expert, but I'm always feeling like when I speak to people who are much more expert about it, they're like, no, the dog really does want you to enforce that thing
Yeah.
because eventually it will make them happier because they understand what their role is and where they fit into something. So you letting them run all over the place during the walk,
Right.
you feel like is helping them, but it's actually kind of confusing to them. So I think there's some parallels there, not to compare our children to dogs. Everybody knows that
Right.
dogs are
I
much more
understand what you
wonderful than our
mean.
kids are when they're in
Yeah.
their teenage years. This is not an insult to dogs. That's what I'm
Oh,
saying here.
that's funny.
But anyway,
But it's true that children, especially children who've been impacted by trauma or loss or multiple placements and multiple household environments, when they have parameters that they know they're safe to operate within, then their bodies can come down and relax, and their nervous system can calm down and relax. And when that all comes together in a calm, relaxed state, they are much more likely to be able to fall asleep and stay asleep. And in the interest of helping our kids, we have control over their environment in sometimes ways that they don't know that they can participate in. How can we set up a calming, sleep friendly environment that will, at the minimum, lead to good rest, restorative rest, but eventually maybe lead to some good restorative sleep too?
I love what you said. Also, within that, setting up parameters where they understand when they don't meet an expectation, that's going to be met with something constructive and full of love and not something else.
Right. Not punitive.
It's absolutely. So I'll preface the answer to your question with I want to be sensitive to a family that So, I mean, I would say, well, you set your bedroom up like this and this and this. And well, what about a kid who doesn't have his own bedroom or is sharing
Right.
his bedroom with several other people or parents? I mean, mom and dad are on a couch at a friend's house. I mean, there's all kinds of like parameters here that are very difficult. And I think that's its own conversation in some ways. But I mean, I think that what you're trying to do in a lot of ways is create an environment that they feel very safe in.
Hmm.
I don't think that that has to be something full of toys and kind of over the top, which I always feel like seems to be the parental compensation. We want them to come into a room that seems like an FEO Schwartz on steroids kind of thing. Like it just, there needs to be ownership. And I think that ownership starts with the child kind of dictating what that looks like and what
Hmm.
that is. Walking into a bunch of stuff that is foreign to them, I think is a little bit scary. I
Yeah.
also think it reinforces this idea of if things don't go well, this will just be an amazing thing that I'm going to lose in a few weeks as I move on to the next place. Like it almost
Mm-hmm.
becomes, I don't want to invest in the ownership of all these amazing things you've got me because
Yeah.
everything up until this point in my life has been transient.
Yeah.
So I think that starting off with a place where they feel comfortable, that they know that you are close by if they're going
Hmm.
to be in a room separate from you. And I think that it's okay in some situations for a child maybe to not be in that. I mean, when we bring babies home, they always are, typically in the room with the parents for a period of time, and then they're in the bassinet next door. So I think there's a lot of situations where that might be the smarter thing to do, transitioning to a new home and new brothers and sisters and new everything. And by the way, I'm going to abandon you in a few hours for this room that you've never been in your entire life. I think is
Right.
difficult. I think that's where things start with spending a lot of time in the child's bedroom doing fun things during the day where you might not ordinarily spend that time. You might be in the living room or the kitchen and doing things like that. So, really trying to create a situation of we'll play in here and we'll do this fun little project we've done, or we're going to make a scrapbook of you as part of our family, whatever you do. And then, but you're still going to sleep with us right now. So you start to develop a comfort level with that room and an association of this is where all the good things happen. And I would stress
Yeah.
that if you do have difficult things to talk to your child about or issues, I would recommend physically going somewhere else to do that. You really want to try to create that room as the space of their own.
Haven.
A
Yeah.
haven. That's a great
Yep.
word for it.
Yeah.
And then I think that the other thing too is as we were talking about curtain calls earlier, yeah, you really want to create this environment of making your child feel like that's the better place to be.
Mm.
Now I think that that separation from mom and dad, they get up, they come in, they want to get in bed with mom and dad, can be difficult, and there's lots of little ways to handle that as the child starts to adapt to the home and you're feeling like, oh, this is going beyond what would typically be normal and becoming more of a habit. When my youngest son would do that, when he would come in, I would say, oh, I'm so glad you're here. I've got some cleaning up to do in the garage. And so we would go down the garage and like sweep up cobwebs and spiders, and it was all symbolic. It wasn't punitive. He didn't have to do it. If he
Right.
wanted to go back to his bedroom, he can. But I'm so
Right.
glad you're here because I got some, cobwebs to clean up and stuff, and you can come down and help me. And we would do it. He had this look on his face like, well, this sucks. This is not great. This is, and I'd be like, oh, I'm so bored doing this by myself every night. So it's great that you're here. We would do it for 10 minutes, and then I would put him back in his bedroom because I wanted to sort of tilt the scale a little bit towards if he
Yeah.
needed me, he could come in there. Like it wasn't like I made it very clear. You do not have to come down with me in the garage if you don't want to. But kind of this feeling of if I wake up, well, why do I want to go in there? We're just gonna like clean up some cobwebs. I had a young woman who I was seeing, and I was like, "How are things going?" She said, "It's really good." I said, "What did you decide to do? How did you figure it out?" She said, "Well, we just cleaned toilets," which I thought was hilarious. Like, you have three toilets in the house, and I do feel like every child should leave my home able to clean a toilet in their adult
Right.
life. Like, it drives me
Right.
crazy. So she would come into the room like, "Oh my gosh, let's go clean a toilet." And so they would sit there and clean toilets, and then she'd put her back in the bedroom. She said that lasted like 2 weeks, and she never came in my bedroom again. So so it's not about being mean. Or one of my friends said maybe you should like put a little mannequin clown in your bedroom. Like, no, you don't want to scare the kids into
No, you don't want
some
to scare
creepy
them.
clown, but you do maybe like, this isn't gonna be the picnic that you think it
Hmm.
is, kind
Hmm.
of thing.
Right.
So anyway, I think that, trying to figure out ways to make their bedroom special. I like your word haven. And then again, it's probably going to require something that you're spending quite a bit of time in there up front, doing
Yeah.
family things and fun things where they start to really associate that place with
Yeah.
a really good time.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about this population in particular, it's probably also really good to, as they are getting older, ask them. I mean, when they're little, they don't necessarily have the language for this, but as they're older, if you're welcoming an older child home, ask them what would make this room feel safe or warm or welcoming. What kinds of things do you like to surround yourself with? Some kids will come to you with a special teddy bear or a special blanket, and keeping that. Don't wash it as soon as they walk in the door. When it's a new foster child or a new kinship child, don't wash that blanket, don't wash that teddy bear. Allow them to have the scents and the textures that come with a well-worn, well-loved teddy bear. We talked a lot as our kids were learning how to sleep on their own about that this is their special place, that this is theirs and they can make it their own. And mommy is more than happy to come in and, sing that song with you or rock, in the rocking chair with you. And I'll do it multiple times a night if that's what you need from me. But that's what I'll do to help you feel like you can be safe in this space.
Yeah, ritual is very important, even for
Yeah.
older
Yep.
kids, I think is so
Yep.
important. And you mentioned smell. And one of the things I often tell Major League Baseball players, these kind of big guys or whatever, just get a pillowcase that your girlfriend or your partner uses and don't wash it and take it on the road with you if you have trouble sleeping. So when you get to the Four Seasons, put the pillow inside that pillowcase and you can, or, even like a t-shirt that she wears at night or something like
Right.
that. Because those smells tie very directly into memory.
Yep.
And so I think your point of that. And I think you also need to abandon all expectations of the way that room is going to look, at least initially.
Yeah.
They've made this weird little thing, or they've got this thing that maybe is something that I don't, a busted up, GI Joe, a foot tall GI Joe guy with no arm. Like I don't really like this whole military thing here, and it's got
Yeah.
one arm, and this is tiny. Just let them
Yeah.
let them have
Yeah.
it. And we can move on with those things as they understand your values and things like that.
Right.
That's not the hill to die on it initially. So that sense of trying to create an instant magical place, the
Right.
magical place will be what they decide it is.
Right. And how they feel when they're there.
Absolutely. What was that?
Yep.
There was a show recently. I can't remember what it was, either a show or a movie, but the main character just felt more comfortable sleeping on the ground. And I thought that was a really interesting detail in the show because
Huh,
I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was, but
that's okay.
and it was distressing to the family because they would come in and he would be sleeping on the ground. But that's kind of what he was at. The bed just made him feel uncomfortable. And that's okay.
Oh,
Just try to support them
yeah.
and things will morph as time passes.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite common in, the adoption and foster circles, more common in adoption circles where we hear about families who've got an extra mattress on the floor next to the parent's bed because the kid just needs to know that they can come
Yeah.
in and be safe and rest there. And the goal is accomplished. They need to feel safe and they need to be able to rest. And if that's what's happening, they're not gonna go to college still sleeping on a mattress next to your bed.
That's what I always say that if your child is sleeping in between the two of you and asking for calculus help on their assignment, yeah, you might have missed some
Yeah,
opportunities
you
along the
might have
way.
missed
But
that window.
I've never been presented with that problem. Mom, prom's tomorrow. Can I sleep in bed with you guys because I'm so nervous about it? Yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
One more interruption to tell you about our interactive training and support curriculum for foster, adoptive, and kinship families. You can find it at parentsupportgroups.org. That's parentsupportgroups.org. It's a turnkey small group learning opportunity with guest expert videos, thought-provoking discussions, and practical tips to help families strengthen their parenting tools and strengthen their relationships within the family. If you love learning as much as we do, then you should check out that curriculum today. And while you're at it, if you love learning about sleep, you should tell a friend about this podcast because they might want to learn more about sleep too. And we would always be appreciative of passing the word along because word of mouth is the best way to learn about a new podcast. So let's go back to the conversation about improving the conditions for sleep in our home and in our families. When should a parent or a caregiver consider seeking professional help for sleep issues for an adopted, foster, or kinship child?
My answer to that question is always as early as you like. I've never encountered somebody. In fact, I just had a patient recently who he was on with his mother. He was an older child, probably in the 15 or 16. And I was like, tell me what's been going on. Well, always been a good sleeper, but last month was having some trouble. And I was like, wow. So this all started a month ago, and here you are. Like that never happens. It's always started during the first Bush administration. Like, man, that was a long time. Like, what?
Right.
Why have you waited so long and made
right.
this? Because this is where you change sort of a behavior versus something that's ingrained in somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the earlier the better. I don't think you're ever going to encounter a doctor who says, "Ooh, you're here way too early." That's one of the things that really frustrates me within my own profession is look up the definition of insomnia. It's got all these weird times to it. Has to be going on for more than 90 days. Has to happen at least 3 days out of 7. So if your kid's freaking out 2 days out of 7, what the medical community ignore? Oh, it's okay because he's only destroying your life 2 days out of the 7. But call me if it's 3 and we can help. Like these are dumb. Like so, to me, I think it's never too early to align. I almost think of sleep interventions like therapy. You don't have to have catastrophic things going in your life to benefit from maybe seeing a therapist.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it's whenever you want to. And the little caveat I'll throw in there is if you have a pediatrician or a clinician that seems resistant to helping with that referral, I'd get another clinician or a pediatrician. Like that should be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Why not? Like, I'm eating pretty well, but I'd like to talk to a nutritionist. Maybe it could be a little bit better. Great. Talk to a nutritionist.
Right.
They're either going to say you're perfect, which nobody is, or here's some ideas to make your 94% awesome nutrition 97%. And I think sleep's exactly the same way. So I don't think it's ever too early to take a look. 99% of the time, my thought after intervening with a family or a parent or a patient or a team or a player, whatever, is what took you so long? This would have been so much easier to deal with when you were in 7th grade versus now that you're married and have 3 kids. Like you're having to unroll and unwind a lot.
Years of ingrained
just bad
habits.
thinking about yes, exactly.
Yep. And that resonates with this community because we regularly recommend that you proactively seek therapy and even consider setting up a relationship with a therapist before the child comes home so that you have them on speed dial and you're ready to go.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So there's no sleep deprivation like overwhelmed, tired parent sleep deprivation. We feel like we're running on empty, we're running on fumes. What guidance do you offer to caregivers and parents so that they can do that consistency and avoid the burnout and be able to respond to their children in those calm and loving ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're in it with a partner, tag teaming is always really helpful. I'm going to make sure that, Wednesday night, you sleep in the guest bedroom. I will deal with whatever the night. It's almost like being on call, as a resident. Like you go home, I'm going to take the call tonight and whatever. And trying to be sort of disciplined about that, even if it's, well, we can't do that all the time, but I'm going to let my partner, sleep in the guest bedroom on Wednesday. they let me sleep in the guest bedroom on Friday. But the other days we because of our work or whatever schedule, we can't do it. Even knowing that you're going to get one decent night of sleep a week can be a game changer. So, and
Yep.
I think that really goes into that idea of looking for help. I think napping or resting is a wonderful thing that you can do that, we don't want that to be plan A typically, but if you had a very difficult night, I think it's perfectly fine for you to seek a little bit of rest, especially if you're saying, look, I would have slept great last night, but these things happened. So
Hmm.
using resting to kind of supplement that can be really, really impactful. And the third thing that I think is important and kind of goes along with that dialogue within the family is understanding that parents need free time. They deserve periods where they can rest. All of these things are things that we should be talking about. Like my family never talked about money, which I always thought was weird. Like, so then you grow up not really understanding how it works. And so when I'm not grateful for you paying for my college, is it really me to blame or you? Because I thought you just had some money and you just paid for college. I don't even know how much college costs. Like, why
Right.
would you think that? So to me, having those conversations about, wow, that was a tricky night for us last night. And I think we're all feeling a little depleted. And like just having those conversations, you don't have to have a solution for them, but it becomes these things happening are impacting my family in ways that kind of impact me. So I think there's a way you can have that conversation without being angry or mean or assigning blame or guilt. So I think all those things are really important and sort of some for everybody kind of being on the same page as you kind of move forward.
Yeah. Establishing a consistent bedtime for myself was such a game changer when my little one, she'd had multiple surgeries over the course of the first 2 years that she was home with us. And making myself go to bed at the same time every night was such a game changer. It gave me something to look forward to, first of all, because there is nothing that feels as good as climbing into bed at the end of a long day. And then it also modeled for the kids like, hey, mom is depleted, mom is exhausted, and mom's been doing some beyond the ordinary care of this child after, two major surgeries. And I feel like it was one of the things that I was most proud of during her both of her recovery periods was that I put myself to bed at the same time every night. I couldn't manage necessarily a lot of consistency with the other stuff, but I was good at that one.
And I think that as parents, we can establish that consistent time to go to your room. I think the little twist is you're telling your kids, this is our bedtime. Everybody's going to go to their bed at their certain bedtime. Whether or not you fall asleep right now
Yeah.
is okay. So
Yeah.
so I always tell you when I said to our kid, you can go to bed whenever you want to. Oh, they were in their bedrooms by 7:30. You know what I mean? Like that.
Right. Right.
But in terms of when you decide to turn your little light out over your bed, I think that's what you want to leave up to them. And then really be focused on consistent wake up time. But yeah, I
Yep.
think that,
Yep.
and it's hard for caregivers because you get everybody in bed and the sleep happens on a Tuesday night. It's
Right.
really tough not to indulge yourself in activities that you've missed out on because your life is so upside down right now. And that can easily lead to what you're saying is you stay up a little bit later because I haven't been able to watch my favorite show in a long time or
Right.
get caught up with
Right.
these things. And it really takes a lot of self-discipline to say, no, yes, I would love to get caught up on the emails and this and that, but
Yep.
I've got to protect myself first
Yep.
and do what I can do to protect, not only my health, but my abilities to be a good caregiver right now. And that's sleep. And
Yeah.
everybody else can just wait. It's like Ashton Kutcher said, I love this quotation. My inbox, my email inbox is just other people's to-do list for me. Which I always thought was great. It's like, it's right. It's not my to-do list.
Good
Like,
point.
I'll send you that thing when I need to send you that thing. But right
Right.
now, I'm going to
Right.
get some sleep.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like great advice for any parent or caregiver who's not just struggling with their own sleep, but maybe with their kids' sleep too. So, Dr. Winter, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it so much.
Well, thanks for having me, Tracy. It's been a pleasure.
We appreciate it. Take care.